All right, welcome everyone for today's Analects. Okay, and it's book 20. I'm sure today will be the last section for our Confucius Analects reading chapter by chapter. And because book 20 only have 3 chapters, even the first one is super long, but so let's start it. And then I believe Kwang has we have the honor or have Kwang read the Dr. Eno's translation. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Kwang.
Absolutely. So, 20.1 translation by Professor Robert Eno. Yao said, O Shun, the numbers of Tian's calendar now fall to your person. Hold well to their Santa. If the lands within the four seas are pressed to exhaustion, the emolument from Tian will be forever ended. With these same words, Sun charged Yu. Tang, the successful, said, I, Lu, who am but a youth, dare to sacrifice this dark-coated bull in clear declaration before the august Lord above. I dare not pardon those who have committed crimes, and thus I cannot make concealment for the Lord's minister, for he has already been observed in the Lord's heart. If I myself have committed a crime, do not hold the myriad regions of the land responsible, but if the myriad regions have committed a crime, let it fall on my person alone. The house of Zhou possessed a great treasure. Good men were its riches. Though I have my closest kin, it is better to have men of a run. If the people err, let it fall on my person alone. The Zhou standardized weights and measures, align laws and ordinances, restore offices that had been allowed to lapse, and governance proceeded in all the four quarters. They restore states that had been extinguished, extended their broken lineages, raised up to office those worthies who had fled to reclusion, and the people of the world responded to them in their hearts. They gave priority to the people, their sustenance, funerals, and sacrifices. Being tolerant, they gained the multitudes. Being trustworthy, the people entrusted them with responsibility. Being quick, they had accomplishments. Being impartial, the people were pleased.
Thank you very much, Kwang. For the person who first time here, that's not typical Confucius Analect because I believe this one is the longest one it could be the longest one, okay, in the Analects. And then there's nothing about what Confucius said. It's totally description, third person description. And then, so let's follow our format. And then we have Amang read the translation made by Amang and me. And then go ahead,
Book
Amang. Read.
20, Chapter 1. Make sure I was unmuted. Sage King Yao said, Ah, you, Shun! According to the almanac calculation of heaven, the position of king rests upon your shoulders. Faithfully thou shalt hold the middle center. If all within the four seas are destitute, the heavenly blessing will end permanently. With the same words, Sage King Shun also commanded the successive sage King Yu. The next successive sage king, Tong, said, I, Lu, a little one, dare to offer the black ox as an offering to the most august Lord, the heavenly emperor, and declare, I do not pardon any crimes. As my Lord's servant, I will not cover up anything. Your decisions are made from my Lord's mind. If I commit crimes, do not make people bear responsibility. If people commit crimes, blame myself alone for the crimes. The Zhou dynasty rewarded feudal lords and enriched good men. King Wu of Zhou said, though I have many close kinsmen, it is better to have people of red. If people err, blame me alone. Calibrate weights and measures, scrutinize laws and ordinances, and restore the abandoned offices. Then the governments in all directions will function. Raise up the failed states, continue the broken lineage of houses, and recruit the reclusive people. Then the hearts of people in the world will return towards you.
Okay.
The important things for the people are food, funerals, and ritual sacrifices. If you're tolerant, you'll gain people. If you're trustworthy, people will have confidence in you. If you are swift, you will have achievements. If you are impartial, people will be happy.
Thank you, Amam. Okay, so this one is very long, and I decide to break up to about 4, 5 section. And the first 3, I put the timeline here. That's this chapter is very unusual, but the author, whoever, the compiler, the editor, try to describe the history before Confucius' time. So three period they are talking about. The first is from King Yao, Sun, and Yu. Okay, these 3 sage kings. Okay, so that's the first part, and I'm not very accurate on numbers. So it's about 220 BCE. During that period of time, 3 sage kings, and they give their throne not to their son, give to the worthy man. So here it said when Yao, the first sage king, decide to give to the throne to his successor Sun, and he give him the words. So you Sun. Okay. So this one is most likely is created after Confucius' time. So probably in the time of Han Dynasty, which is about 200 BCE, and they try to insert the concept of mandate of heaven. That's why they put the words in Yao's mouth and say, okay, that's the heaven, the calculation, the Armenic calculation is of heaven is on you. That's your job to do this one. So they get their power from heaven. That's the message you're talking about. And after Sun get the older age, he also find his successor, Yu. Okay, so he also say the same word to Yu. That's the first period of time. Then after Yu become the emperor, he didn't give his throne to the worthy one. He start to give the throne to his son. So the inheritance, this kind of method, okay, start from this period of time. So after 500 years, okay, it's around 1700 BCE, okay, they have the revolution, okay, because the descendant of Yu, the 3rd sage king, right, is a tyrant, okay. So that's why Tang, okay, his dynasty is Shang, okay. Tang, okay, that's his name. He started to have a revolution, but when he had a revolution, he worshiped to the Lord, which is the heavenly Lord. Okay, so he said heavenly to the august Lord, the heavenly Lord, okay, declare. So I dare not pardon. So he said, the crime, I'm going to punish, okay, the crime, and that's the mandate of heaven. Okay, I have to rebel. My boss, okay, the last tyrant, the last king of the descendant of Yu. So Tang has a revolution. So everything changed. So after 500 years, around 500 years, they have another tyrant, okay, from Tang descendant. So they have another revolution come out, which is the Zhou dynasty. So the Zhou dynasty start to build the feudal system. So the system is a little bit different because he give the state, the fiefdom to his relatives. So that's why he said, though I have many close kinsmen, it is better to have a people of Ren if people err bring me along. So he has many kinsmen, many relatives, many worthy generals. So he just assigned a different state, so-called state, feudal state, to his relative, his brother, his nephews. Okay, so that's the way the new system built it. And this system is so being considered as the best system by Confucius. So we end here. And then the rest, Confucius, well, we just put the Confucius word, but without Confucius said. Basically, it's talking about what the Zhou dynasty has been set up as a perfect political system. So we talk about calibrate the weight measure, that means standardize the system, the political system, and everything in order. And the last part talking about the important thing for the people are food, funeral, and the ritual sacrifice. Okay, that means the economic in today's way, economics, economics and the religious for their daily life. That's the final message is talking about. And then I think the most important message in this one will be 兴灭国具迭氏. Okay, that would be the most important message for the later teaching. The before history just recount, okay, re-describe what happened in the history. So basically, it's talking about this one become the raise up the failed state, continue the broken lineage of house, and recruit reclusive people. Then the heart of the people in the world will return toward you. So this message become a duty for all the future emperor. Okay, so your job is doing this. So that's become very important message for next, let's say, 2,000 years, okay, of Chinese history. So I will stop here. I believe there's a lot of message here, and then I hope I can make it more clear, and we will see how Among is going to interpret this long and long passage.
So thank you. Yes, this is a long one, and it is almost undoubtedly a Han Dynasty China retrofit into the Analects because it reads as if it has no place here. But I've said before, after book one, the Analects are all reiteration. And here we see a message being reinforced, one of which is Confucius' claim to not be a innovator, but to be a transmitter, that he was the vessel for transmitting ancient ideas into his modern time. And we see this in three successive dynasties, the Shang, and the Zhou. Sage King Yao, Sha dynasty. The King Tang would be the Shang dynasty, and then explicitly the Zhou dynasty. These are sort of the foundational three original dynasties of ancient China. And by pointing all the way back to the ancient Xia, what does it say here? It says, the position rests upon your body. You have merited it. It's a meritocracy that you are being given the position of king. It's not something that you had through that sort of generational inheritance. And that's retrofitting the mandate of heaven into the idea. When we get, but then you get from Shun to Yu, and we get inheritable title. And so that is a tradition that, if you think of this, reading this in the position of Han China, the fact that the emperor inherits his position, totally legitimate. It's happened all the way back there. But merit also factors in. The emperor inherits because he also inherits a degree of merit of character, presumably. In the Shang dynasty, I'm trying to see where it says it, you get this declaration to the august Lord Emperor of Heaven, and this notion of self-character being paramount, that if I am committing a crime, then let the punishment fall to me. But if I'm right, if I am usurping my Lord because he's lost the mandate of heaven and I actually have earned it, then let it be, my burden to bear this crime, and let my people, flourish, is what he's basically offering up in soliloquy. Here we get some of Confucius' ideas of remonstration at its most extreme, when you cannot pardon or forgive the person you're rebelling against. You also get the idea of ritual sacrifice and how absolutely important that must be for you to have that legitimate character. And then in the Zhou dynasty, we start to see Confucius' explicit ideas being pro-offered again. The idea that treasure is great, but people of Ren are better. Ren is the best virtue people could have. And if you have people of Ren around you, you have something much more valuable than treasure. The idea of calibration, scrutinizing, I have a feeling that that's a throwback to a dynasty not mentioned here, the Qin, who did this sort of extreme standardization, but that was carried into the Han and was legitimated there as well. But then you get what Jason pointed out: raise up the failed states, continue the broken lineages of houses, and recruit reclusive people. If somebody has merit, their background isn't as important. Did they come from a collapsed state within your kingdom? Is their family house destitute? All of this doesn't matter. If they are men who have learned the lessons of the Analects, then you should be recruiting them towards you. That's going to be most important. And lastly, to cap off, food, funeral, and li, rituals. Though it says ritual sacrifice, just extend that to all those rituals. You have to be tolerant of people who need these things. You have to engender their ability to have these things. And if you do your job right by being sort of the moral exemplar laid out by the exemplars of the Shah, the Shang, and the Zhou, then you'll have a happy populace that you are ruling. That was kind of one of the fundamental ideas of Confucianism, or of Confucius, even into Confucianism to some degree later on, that your moral character provided you with the most powerful tool to govern a people. And you had to work at cultivating that. You weren't just going to be born with it. It was something you had to merit, something you had to earn, something you had to learn.
Thank you, Amam. Okay, so let's have some discussion of this one. If you Kwang, you have something to say, I believe. You have to you no
Yes,
too long.
yes. No, on the contrary, I think that it's not so long for
Okay.
what it may the 42, 45 lines summarize in an excellent manner the Confucianist doctrine. So I think it's not long for what it managed to achieve. So first, I want to say that traditionally, Yao ruled between 2324 BCE to 2255 BCE. So you have Yao, Shun, and Yu. Those three together are from 2324 BCE to 2070 BCE, meaning, let's say, almost 250 years or more or less. Why I say that those 5 or 6 paragraphs are really good, because the history of China can be grossly divided in 4 periods. Okay, what is called the Yang Shao culture and the Long Shang culture, meaning from 5000 BC, not 5,000 years ago, but 3000 BCE to 2000 BCE. That is what is called proto-history. And Yao, Shun, and Yu are the last figure of that proto-history. So it's 1,000 years. Okay, we often say that the history of China is 5,000 years. The first 1,000 years is proto-history. So once again, Yao, Shun, and Yu are the last 3 figures of that period of the first millennium called the proto-history. The second part of Chinese history is the 3 royal houses. The Xia dynasty, 2070 BCE to 1600 BCE. The Shang dynasty, 1600 BCE to 1046 BCE. And the Zhou dynasty, 1046 BCE to 256 BCE. So those 3 royal houses, 18th century, from 2070 BCE to 256 BCE, is the second part of Chinese history. The third part of the Chinese history is Imperial China, 221 BCE to 1912, so 21st century of Imperial China. And the fourth part of Chinese history started with the end of the empire in 1912 and is still keeping on nowadays in 2024 to the far future. So that part, that paragraph 20.1 managed to symbolically summarize the history of China from proto-history and the 3 royal houses. And that's why I think it's not long at all for what it managed to achieve. I think that Jason and Amon's translation of the numbers of Tian's calendar now fall to your person, meaning that the calendar's calculation now grant you the empire or the kingdom is interesting. There is another interpretation of that line, meaning that it is the responsibility of the sovereign to manage the calendar. Okay, because in Chinese history,
Okay.
you can have a continuous counting of the years, of the passing years, but most of the time the usual calendar was centered on a sovereign. Okay, we say the second year of that sovereign or the 26th year of that sovereign. Okay, and it starts again with the new sovereign, and at the end of a dynasty they make the summary of all the sovereign of that dynasty with the number of years of that sovereign ruled during his reign. So So Yao say, O Sun, and with the same word, Sun Cha Yu. Okay, so Yao Sun Yu, the proto-history, the end of the proto-history, once again, 3000 BCE to 2000 BCE. And for those who study the history of China, it's called the Longshan culture. Okay, Longshan culture between 3000 BCE and 2000 BCE. If you want to go to prehistory, the prehistory of China is between 12,000 years BCE to 3,000 years BCE. So the prehistory of China lasted for 9,000 years. And the last period of the prehistory of China is called the Yang Shao culture between 5,000 BCE to 3000 BCE. And the proto-history, once again, I repeat, is from 3000 BCE to 2000 BCE, and it's called the Longshan culture. And in that Longshan culture are the figures of Yao, Sun, and Yu. And the only thing that I want to say to finish, two things. Most of the time in the Analects, the name of the supreme God is Tian, heaven. But here, because when Tang the successful spoke, let's not forget that he was the creator of the Shang dynasty. And the name of the supreme God under the Shang dynasty was not Tian, but Shang Ti. Okay? And the translation by Professor Inu was perfect because the august Lord above. Okay? I would have translated Shang Ti as the Lord on high, but the august Lord above is quite good too. So it's special here because most of the time we are more used with the word Tian translated as heaven. And with the word Tian, we have an impression of a abstract divine reality rather than an anthropomorphic God. But with the name of Shangti, the august Lord above, during the Shang dynasty, 1600 BCE to 1046 BCE, we have a very clear indication of a heavenly anthropomorphic God, not different that much from the God of the Old Testament in the Western world. The god Tian at the beginning of the Zhou dynasty was still perceived as a lot anthropomorphic. Till the period of Confucius, more or less, and I remind that Confucius was born in 551 BCE and died in 479 BCE. It was around the life of Confucius, and it was not only because of Confucius. There were a lot of factors that made that transformation, but it happened around the life of Confucius that the word Tian was moving from an anthropomorphic heavenly God to a more abstract divine heavenly entity, and that meaning is still in operation nowadays. And the only thing that I want to say that the notion of a run is interesting because that notion is about the people having wisdom, valor, humanity, and justice. However, I want to say that in the past, the kings were not only endowed with ran, they were endowed with the charismatic virtue. And it is because they were considered as the son of heaven that they had that something that is much more than ran, and that is the charismatic virtue by which they radiated a kind of magical aura or inner power that would make them irresistible in terms of Chinese mythology, legitimizing the monarchy. And that notion of Te having legitimated monarchy for 4,000 years, from the royal period of 2070 BCE to the end of the empire in 1912. So practically 4,000 years. So that's why I said that that paragraph is not so long for what it managed to achieve. I stop here.
All right, thank you, Kwang. It's a lot to digest. Okay, so I think I do see some difference between I'm not saying I disagree. I think that's a very good point, especially on the calendar. So 天之历数在耳公. Yeah, one way to I think the traditional probably interpret as you are responsible, just like Kwang said, you are responsible for the calendar, okay, and which has been practiced for the next 2,000 years for the because every new dynasty they will have their own calendar, the way to calculate, and if you don't follow, that's a crime. Okay, that's a serious crime if you still use old calendar. Okay, so that's the message here. And then, of course, another way to talk about is according to the calendar calculation. That's by the surface, by the word. So I think that's the part is important. I think I need to think about it, how to rephrase the word. Okay, I thank you, Kwang, for pointing out this one. And the second thing I think that also important I hear from Kwang is about the religious part. Because these three, the first three chapters, right? We talk about the three dynasty, basically. Okay, the Xia, Shang, and the Zhou. And then it's related, it's also has some religious flavor on this one, because what they worship, right? Important thing is the concept of heaven, probably not really formed in Shang dynasty, because the worship heaven actually is start from Zhou dynasty. So that's why the text in the Shang dynasty, it doesn't use the heaven, only use the Huang Huang Hou Di. Okay, that's the, I don't know, God, 上帝, I don't know what would be the best way to translate. August Lord, that probably, that's why it's used the Lord, Di. That's a little bit unusual in the most of the ancient Chinese texts. So that's the thing I'd like to say about the first part of the history. And the second part is more on the political, moral, political teaching, and tell you, okay, what's the responsibility, what's the duty of an emperor need to do, which is following what the ancient sage, which means Zhou dynasty, is doing. I think that's the message. Yeah, it's a lot to unpack, and then that's I have Mark, please.
Thank you. Good to see everybody. One question is more factual and the other one is maybe more interpretive, but the factual question, I know I've looked at this before, but I don't remember. We have the three dynasties of Xia, Shang, and Zhou. But the three kings of Yao, Shun, and Yu, those are part of the Shang?
No, that's
No,
before.
no.
No.
Yes.
Kwang, you
Yes.
want to explain that? That's before Yu is the founder of Xia. So Yao, Sun, Yu, that's the three sage king. And after Yu, they had start with the three dynasty. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, they predate the three dynasties.
Predate, yes, predate.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Mark, they are part of the period that goes from 3000 BCE to 2000 BCE. Okay, let's not forget that the first royal house, the Xia dynasty, XIA, began in 2071 BCE. The period of time between 3000 BC and 2000 BCE are called by the archaeologists and the historians the Longshan culture, Longhashan, and it's a very good name because it means the mountain of the dragon. Okay, so it's perfect for a name for a period of Chinese history. So that period of Longshan culture, having lasted about 1,000 years between 3000 BC and 2000 BCE, correspond to the period where you have Yao, Sun, and Yu. Yao started to rule in 2324 BCE. So it's easy to remember 2324 BCE, okay? 2324 BCE. So since the Longshan culture ended in 2000 BCE, well, 2070 BCE to be precise, with the beginning of the Xia dynasty, to be exact, the son of Yu created the Xia dynasty, okay? He was the king Qi, Qi. So I know that I'm a little bit pedantic here, but Yu did not create the Xia dynasty because when Yu was about to die, he named a Ren person to be the next emperor or the next sovereign. But the aristocrat of that time said, no, we prefer your son. Okay. And that's why the first hereditary monarchy began in 2071 BCE. So Yao, Sun, and Yu were the last major sovereigns of that Longshan culture. That is traditional history. But if you compare traditional with history with critical history, okay, it means that the Longshan period was the period where you have a confederation of tribes, but you don't really have a centralized kingdom, okay? So you have some tribes who are more powerful than others. So probably that Yao, Sun, and Yu were the chiefs of the most powerful tribe at the time, and the other tribe revolved around them. With the creation of the Xia dynasty, you start to have more centralization. But the first dynasty, which will create something that would resemble to what we call a kingdom nowadays, it's not the Xia dynasty, it's the Shang dynasty. Okay, the dynasty having started in 1600 BCE and ended in 1046 BCE. It was really with the Shang dynasty that we can speak of a true monarchy. And let's not forget that it was also aristocrats of the Shang dynasty who created the Chinese writing system. Okay, so even with the Xia dynasty, to be critical and precise, it's still a kind of tribal confederation with a tribe that is much more powerful than the others. So I would say that even if traditional history started monarchy in 2071 BCE with the Xia dynasty, with our contemporary criteria, I would say that true monarchy started in China with the Shang dynasty in 1600 BCE, and it's the same dynasty who invented the writing system. So I stop here.
Yes, thank you, Quan. And you know, those periods, the period of the Longshun, I forget how you wrote it, Longshun from
Longshan.
Longshan.
from
Dragon
3000.
Longshan.
Shan.
Okay,
2000 BCE to 3000 BCE to 1000 BC to 2000 BCE. So a period of 1,000 years. You can say the contour of the mountain of the dragon. So
yeah, that corresponds to the Egyptian middle period into the Egyptian early period to the middle period.
Yes, exactly. It was the ancient, the old kingdom of the Egyptians.
And in terms of Mesopotamia, it corresponds to the emergence of the Sumerians after which we get the Akkadians, and some of the Sumerian texts go back to about 2000, 2500. So why is it, do you think, that China didn't get this written system earlier? I know.
The writing system?
Yeah, well, I think that the Egyptians were more advanced than the Chinese in ancient times. It's
I
as
think
simple as that.
the Sumerians and the Sumerians were even more advanced than the Egyptians for writing.
Absolutely. China doesn't have the crown of the oldest civilization. China has the crown of the oldest continuous civilization. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
what I would say about the writing system though that's interesting is Chinese writing system emerges looking more like the Egyptian writing system in terms of it being pictographic. And when we get it in that Shang dynasty, it's fully formed. It's completely there. So we don't see like sort of an evolution to it. It's just boom, we get a whole complete writing system. Um, One thing I would add to what Kwon was saying, which is a comprehensive, you know, history and proto-history, which I like the term proto-history more than prehistory, is that there is also a prehistoric culture within China, the Yang Shao, who predate the Longshan. They are roughly 5-ish thousand BCE to 3000 BCE. And these are sort of treated as the official people of China beforehand. But there were contemporaneous people in other regions of China, like in the Yangtze River Valley and other regions, that were just sort of subsumed into the fold. And getting these people to get along, I agree with Quan, probably did not happen until you get the Shang dynasty, who were able to actually sort of treat it as fiefdoms.
Yeah, and Aman, that period is so interesting, from 5,000 to about 3,000. And in some ways, it corresponds with the early European settlements of Catalhayuk and Lepensky Vir, as well as Jericho, which is a bit older, of course. And so I know there is a rich history of Chinese Neolithic artifacts that are really, really interesting. And I don't think they lagged in any way when it came to the artifacts of the Neolithic.
yeah. And I would say that if you look at the pottery of the Chinese Neolithic, they looks like a lot of to modern art.
Yes. Yeah.
So, no, no, sincerely. And and what is interesting, and you're right to mention the Neolithic sites of Western Europe or of Turkey, Ketan Huyuk, and so on, because nowadays the new historians realize that even in the remote past, oh yeah, exactly, that's a Yang Shao stuff, and
My favorite museum is the Oriental Institute at the University of Chicago.
oh, that's one. Okay, I see. So, but you were right to mention the stuff in Ketan Huyuk and so on, because historians nowadays realize that people in that remote past, they had contact through Central Asia. Okay, for example, now it's we know now that the Shangying dynasty used chariots drawn by horses, by 2 or 3 or 4 horses, because they were inspired by uh, tribes from Central Asia. Because we know that the horses were tamed somewhere in Central Asia, maybe around 6000 BC. Okay, so, and from there it went to China, it went to Egypt, it went to Mesopotamia, and so on. So Central Asia play an immense role in terms of control communication between uh, the west of the Eurasian continent and the east of the Eurasian continent.
The
Yeah.
historian in me is loving this, but I know Jason's waiting for us to get to chapter 2.
I know, but I have a way to tie it back into Jason. So when we read I know that you started reading, I think, the Book of Poetry.
Yeah.
And so when we consider the 4 classics,
Yeah.
how old do we think those go back?
What do you mean?
Do you think that they go back to the period of the beginning of the Shang or the end of the Shang?
Oh, they through the period, right? Some in the, I think through the some are before. Most are after Zhou dynasty, unless Quang have the different. I think some of them are even older than Zhou, but
Yes. In the Book of Documents, we have some texts who are from the Shang Ying dynasty. Okay.
Yeah.
But in the Book of Songs, the oldest poems are from the 11th century BCE, meaning the beginning of the Zhou, maybe the last poems of the Shang dynasty, maybe the last generation of the Shang dynasty. But if you want documents from the Shang dynasty, you have to go to the inscription on bones and turtle scales.
Oracle bones, yeah.
Yeah, oracle bones. And yeah, I think it's the basics. In my understanding, most the ancient is the stuff from Zhou, and before Zhou, I'm not sure how much, in philosophy, okay, other than well, I think it's I don't know, I'm
because
technically I'm not that, just be honest, I'm not that interested in the accuracy of history. Okay, what I take is that's the book. It's an ancient book. I read it. It's a book. That's the way I see it. But I'm not saying that's the only way to do it. But that's why whenever you want to compare with the historical accuracy, I kind of just shut off, because what I read is a book. I don't care. The Bible is really a God's message or not, but I recognize it's a Bible. That's it.
Did the Yellow Emperor actually have a hole in his stomach or not? We don't need to even worry about it, but it's written that way.
Yeah. But I want to say that in the 5 classics, okay, the Yi Ching is a document of the Zhou dynasty. The Shu Ting, the Book of Documents, is a document of starting with the Zhou dynasty, but there are 3 texts which are from the Shang Ying dynasty. Okay, it's the only of the 5 classics that have documents from the Shang dynasty, which were not on bones or oracle turtle scales. Okay, turtle carapaces. The Shu Ting, all the poems are from the Zhou dynasty. The Chun Chu obviously is from the Zhou dynasty, because we know the time frame of the Chun Chu, 722 BCE to 481 BC, from the Lu Principality. And the 3 books on the rites and rituals and ceremonies, the San Li, meaning the Zhou Li, the Li Qi, and the Li Yi, are obviously documents from the Zhou dynasty. Okay, so except for the 3 texts in the books of documents, the Shu Qing having a link with the Shang dynasty, 97% of the 5 classics were produced during the Zhou dynasty, which happened between 1046 and 256 BCE.
Okay, so this chapter has a lot of history, and then, but at least I read this way. The key message is the last 2 part, and which Confucian. Okay, let's say that this one is not necessarily Confucius. The person is Confucianist. Okay, they believe the Zhou dynasty give us, okay, the best system, and then set up the standard. Then so that's why I would say the last 2 paragraphs, which we didn't spend a lot of time to discuss, is the key for the message on this one. Okay. So we probably should have moved to another long chapter, but don't worry, chapter 3 is very short. Okay, So if you can take chapter 3, it's so-called the standard way of reading Confucius Analects. And then next one, chapter 2 is totally different. There's no history at all, but and then the writing is also interesting because it's very systematic. Okay, 5 good thing and 4 bad thing. Okay, which is very modern. Let's put it this way. Okay, so let's start our tradition. We have Kwang to read the Dr. Eno's translation.
Okay, so 20.2 from Robert Eno. Zhu Chang asked Confucius, "What must a man be like before he may participate in governance?" Confucius said, "If he honors the 5 beautiful things and casts out the 4 evils, then he may participate in governance." Zhu Chang said, "What are the 5 beautiful things?" The master said, "The Junzi is generous but not wasteful, a taskmaster of whom none complain, desirous but not greedy, dignified but not arrogant, awe-inspiring but not fearsome." Zhu Chang said, "What do you mean by generous but not wasteful?" The master said, "To reward people with that which benefits them. Is that not to be generous but not wasteful? To pick a task that people can fulfill and set them to it, is that not to be a taskmaster of whom none complain? If one desires a run and obtains it, wherein is he greedy? If he never dares to be unmannerly, regardless of whether with many or a few, with the great or the small, is that not to be dignified but not arrogant? When the Junzi sets his cap and robes right and makes his gaze reverent, such that people stare up at him in awe, is it not indeed to be awe-inspiring and not fearsome?" Zhu Chang said, "What are the 4 evils?" The master said, "To execute the people without having given them instruction is called cruelty. To inspect their work without warning is called oppressiveness. To demand timely completion while having been slow in giving orders is called thievery. To dole out stingily what must be given is called clerkishness."
Thank you, Kwang. We have another long paragraph. Okay. So basically, this one is okay. Aman, you can read this one.
Book 20, Chapter 2. Zizhang asked Confucius, saying, "How can a person be ready to serve in government?" The master said, "If you can honor 5 good things and reject 4 evils, then you're ready to serve in government." Zizhang said, What are these 5 goods called?" The master said, "A jinsa is generous but not wasteful. He works the people but receives no complaints. He has desires but is not greedy. He stays at the top but is not arrogant. He's dignified but not fearsome." Zizhang said, "What does it mean to be generous but not wasteful?" The master said, "Benefiting people in the way they want to have benefits. Is this not being generous but not wasteful? Only working people when they are able to work. Who will complain? Desiring rent and receiving the rent. Is this greedy? A junzi dares not neglect anything, regardless of whether with many or a few, with the great or the small. Does he not stay at the top without being arrogant? A junzi straightens his robe and cap and makes his gaze respectful. Thus, people stare at him in awe. Is it not being dignified, but not fearsome? Zhang said, "What are these four evils called?" The master said, "To execute people without first teaching them. This is called cruelty. To inspect for completion without warning. This is called suddenness. To demand timeliness while orders are issued slowly. This is called harmfulness. To be stingy in the process of giving to or taking from people. This is called petty clerkishness."
Thank you, Amon. Okay, so that's another long one, and then nothing about history, and then the structure is very simple, right? The Zizang is the one of a very young disciple. Every time when Zizang asks a question, I believe Zizang is not quite smart. Okay, so every time Zizang asks question, Confucius give a very detailed answer. So through him, we know a lot of detailed step-by-step instruction. So here, Zizang is one to work for the government. Of course, he asks his teacher about what's the advice. And the Confucius give you very clear answer. Okay, five good thing and then four bad thing you should avoid. Okay, so it make it very clear. The only difference is how we translate this one. So I think that the way I do it is okay. So when Zizang asks, okay, what does it mean? Be generous but not wasteful. He doesn't mean only this question, right? He asked these five questions. So Confucius answer these five, right? Why you should be generous but not wasteful. You should work the people but doesn't receive the complaint. You have a desire but not become greedy. And you stand on the top but not arrogant. And then also dignified, but not fearsome. I think that's a very good guideline for you to become, for a person to work as a government officer, right? Because you, for example, I really like the word is the stay on the top but not arrogant. And the Chinese word is 泰而不骄. I like to highlight this word. For example, he's talking about 泰 basically means the mountain. Okay, you stay on the top. Okay, Jiao, if you read the words, that's related to horse. You stay on the tall horse, so you are arrogant. So here you're talking about your position is already higher than the common people. So you should not be arrogant. Okay. So another thing is related to the attitude. For example, how to work the people, because the government usually work ask people to do something, but you should do it in the right timing. In this way, you will not receive complaint because nobody want to do the additional work. So you have to be careful on that. So that's Confucius' so-called moral political teaching. And then for the bad thing, okay, you should avoid. He also lists four things you should avoid, right? You should not, basically you talk about forbid, execute the people, kill people, punish people without teaching. In Confucius system is very aristocratic system because the officer is in a higher position, is more knowledgeable than the regular people. So you discipline the people, but before you discipline, you also need to teach the people, right? And then you do inspection, but you need to give warning. You don't do it like the purpose is make sure the job done is not to give you a surprise to find your fault. Okay, so he called the suddenness, right? And the what's that? Okay, you demand if you work as a the demand foreign yeah, demand timeliness without order issue. Okay. This is called harmfulness, right? We will see a lot of things if you work as a project manager, right? So you have the deadline to finish, but you need to you need to have some order to do it because all about the process. So I think all these one are very practical advice. Okay, so I believe this one kind of like give you a very clear sum up about it's put in the last book. I think that's a good position to put here because it gives you a good summary about the Confucius on the practical side, how to uh, work for the government. Because the whole purpose of learning Confucianism is to work for the government. And this one gives you a clear instruction. Okay, from Confucian teaching. Is that Confucius? Oh yeah, from Confucius' word, right? Clear what you need to do and then what you need to avoid. So I think this one is important and serve as a good summary and is put in the right position at the end. And the next one is short, but I think it's also important to summarize Confucius, how to learn. Okay, so I'll stop here and Amang, if you please.
I'm going to start by just saying I'm really proud of that translation as petty clerkishness because it absolutely fits and I really liked it. Yeah, this feels more like the Analects. It's a conversation between master and student. That's what we've seen throughout most of the Analects. And so there apparently was a need to add one more conversation here. This conversation is the one that they chose was the near bookend of this entire text. And it's ironic, there are many of Confucius' ideas, ideals, lessons, all condensed into just a few paragraphs. But I really want to zero in on that second to last. Junsa straightens his robe and cap and makes his gaze respectful. It is reported in the Shiji by Sima Chan that when Confucius' disciple Zaiwo, who was a consummate pain in the master's behind, met his demise, the last thing he did after being ran through in the course of a rebellion was to reach over and repeat these lines as he took his cap, put it on, and say, "A Junsa straightens his robe and cap," as his very last act of death. Zaiwo was the most pain in the butt difficult student the master had. Many of the readers would know of that tale of his end. And here we see that infamous line of direction from the master and the fact that Zaiwo got it in the end. Even the most difficult, I may be projecting here a little bit with my students, but even the most difficult of students can get the lesson eventually. His readers would be familiar with this, or contemporary readers of the Han Dynasty would be familiar enough with this to read that line and go, "Oh, that's where he got it. There's the lesson." And that would be enough to spark, what other lessons are in here? This is a paragraph or a chapter all about the Junsa, the person every Confucian student was training to be. And this entire discussion is about setting terms. How do I know I'm ready to serve? You know when you're a Junsa. How do I know that I'm a junsa? Here are the ways you know you're a junsa. And nobody ever met the criteria of junsa by Confucius' own mouth throughout the Analects, who was alive. After they were dead, he might bestow that honor upon them. But even the master did not say he was a junsa. He was working at being a junsa, trying every day to be just a little bit closer to being a real junsa, polemic term, real junsa, as opposed to the nominal junsa, these clerks who get to run around and operate things. A lot of Confucius sentiment is wrapped into this chapter, and I really like it for that.
Thank you, Amam. Let's have some discussion, question, comment on this one. That's almost the last chance to do it. Okay, Kwang, please.
Well, I think that you were absolutely right saying that after all, Confucianism, one of its purpose was to create an imperial bureaucracy. And here, and before the imperial bureaucracy, the bureaucracy of the principalities and of the kingdoms before 221 BC. So here, we truly have the embodiment of the cardinal virtues in very specific bureaucratic situation. That is why that is very true that petty clerkishness refer directly to that bureaucratic dimension. I often say that the vertical reality of the infinite awareness is invisible, according to the Chongyou, one of the four books, that the about which speaks about the invisibility of ultimate greatness, that infinite awareness, precise. But that infinite awareness manifests in time, okay, because that invisibility of ultimate greatness is in timelessness. But when it manifests in time, it is represented by the six layers of the mind as symbolized by the hexagram. And once again, first line, sense perception, second line, intellect, third line, social sophistication, fourth line, the mind powers for justice, fifth line, the mind powers for valor and humanity, and sixth line, the mind powers for wisdom. So, and here, not only the manifestation in time is not limited to the mentions of the cardinal virtue, but gave five beautiful things and four evil. So it's even more precise in time concerning the dimension of Confucianism for the imperial bureaucracy, because I often say that there are at least three aspects of Confucianism. The imperial matrix, that we see it here, a obvious example. The control milieu of the scholars, and the epistemological development. I stop here.
Thank you, Kwang. Paul, please.
Yeah, I'm really struck by this as just in a contemporary sense, a master course, because I come from a corporate background. I was a manager in a corporate setting. This is a master class in leadership. This is a master class in management. And you could take every single one of these things and notice how much people need to hear them about how you project a leadership sense without being fearful, and how you you work with people at their level, and about you want knowledge and you take it and give it, about how you you don't neglect the details, you avoid arrogance, you're dignified but not fearsome, and you stay with a presence that you respect in yourself by straightening your robe and cap. I love it. I'm just wanted to say that. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. So I believe this one. That's why I said it's very modern, And then just like you can definitely teach in the MBA management class, and it's still true today, You just don't call it the execution without teaching, but you don't punish your people without let them know what they to do. And also like the word what's that, when you inspect you need to let people know, right? You so many times you see your manager just walk in and then check what is that's wrong. I really understand this part, so uh,
I wish I read this 10 years ago when I was managing a group of software developers. I would have
I
learned
want
better how to manage.
I should ask my manager to read this one before before I joined the company. Where it was?
I wanted to add one thing before Mark to what Paul said, because the idea that this is a masterclass in management. Confucius' final enterprise was to train morally exemplary and competent advisors for rulers, because he realized rulers themselves may or may not ever have this. But if I can get people in position who can do this, and to be a good advisor was not a matter of birth, it was a matter of talent, it was a matter of etiquette, and it was a matter of managerial acumen. And so if you had those three, you could put yourself in that position. So yeah, he was very serious about a master class of management.
Yeah, and then sometimes we criticize Confucius. Confucius is too conservative because he never think about change the hierarchy society. Yes, that's correct. But what he did is he add the moral sense for the ruler. Okay, so which doesn't exist before. So he give the moral teaching to the ruler. So in this way, he's a progressive, not all conservative. Yeah. Yeah, we have a Mark, then Kwang. Mark, please.
Thanks. It's been a real honor reading all of these with you and studying them for most of them for the first time. I think I see what you mean by saying that it's the imperial matrix that really matters, that it's the establishment of the imperial bureaucracy, because the question is limited to what must a man be like before he can take part in government, because there are a lot more parts of life than just taking part in government. There are parts of life that come before one takes part in government, and parts of life that happen after one takes part in government and alongside taking part in government. And I'm wondering, you mentioned that Zhu Chang was maybe not that intelligent of a disciple, but if he was able to elicit from the master the longest and most complete answers, maybe he was the best student. So, in general, I think that the Analects are more wide-ranging than just this chapter. This is more narrowly focused, but in the Analects as a whole, I think we get an idea of the Jinsu when he's not taking part in government.
Thank you, Mark. Let me put this way. I take a little bit different view from you. Okay, so I read what should I say? We probably learn just like you said, Mark. You said we learn 君子 outside of government, but I do see when Confucius teaching, he does expect everybody work for government. Okay, so he probably not interested to teach me since I'm not interested to work for the government about 君子, about 人, about all these things. But doesn't matter. You are smart, you are stupid, or you are low from the peasant background, or you are from the royal family. As long as you want to work for government, and he would like to teach you. Okay, I think that's what I read on this one. So, yeah, but of course, we all have a different interpretation, and that's the reason I insist we should read the original, not the secondary, not the commentary, not the through the historical account. We just bring the book and read it, and you see how it do it. Kwang, please.
Well, I would like to say that there's an expression coming from Confucius himself and from the Confucianists, which will reconcile the three dimensions of Confucianism: the imperial matrix, the control milieu of the scholars, and the personal epistemological development. And that expression is Li Yi Chupang. Okay, because the dream of Confucius was not the imperial matrix. The imperial matrix was only a tool for creating Li Yi Chupang. And Li Yi Chupang meaning a country with etiquette, ceremonies, and music. Okay, a nation endowed with music, etiquette, and ceremonies, or if you prefer, a civilized nation. And the three dimension of Confucianism, the imperial matrix, was important because for Confucius, the people within that imperial matrix are formed the aristocratic oligarchy of that nation. And aristocratic here is not used only in the meaning of the born aristocrats, but the true aristocrats having an advanced epistemological development. So when Mark, you say that I see much more the gentleman as manifesting his virtues not only within the imperial bureaucracy but in general in life, I think you're absolutely right. That's the second dimension that I name, the control milieu of the scholars, meaning that that aristocratic oligarchy was expected and is expected not only to be active within official positions, but also to radiate a certain um, control influence in terms of refinement and in terms of morality. And that second layer of control influence would be only possible if the first layer and the most fundamental has been achieved, what I call the personal epistemological growth. So there is a continuity within the three dimensions of Confucianism that I would see as a triangle. The most important or the deepest, if you want, okay, is the personal epistemological development as symbolized by the 6 lines of the hexagram. Because once again, the ultimate greatness, according to the Chongyong, is invisible. That is the verticality of the infinite awareness. But when you develop that infinite awareness, it manifests in time at 6 lines representing 6 ascending mind powers, from the sense perception at the first line to wisdom at the last line. The 6th line, the top line of the hexagram. So that is the top or the deepest requirement of Confucianism, the personal epistemological development. And when you have that personal epistemological development, you will be capable to play your role in the other 2 dimensions, meaning the refinement and the morality of what I call the social and cultural milieu of the scholars, and eventually playing a role within the imperial bureaucracy. Okay, so Confucianism is a control machine for producing aristocratic men, but in the epistemological meaning and not in the hereditary nobility meaning. Junzi, once again, I think that I say it for the umpteenth time, but it's worth repeating that. Junzi means the son of a lord. Jun, lord, and Zi, son. But when people say that Confucianism is a position that is quite conservative, I think it's a very wrong judgment. Confucianism is the only possible revolution, because I don't want to be too political here, but there are countries that you can change the political party, but the policy don't change. If the policies don't change, there is no need to change the government. It's just a farce. But there are countries that you don't change the government, but the policies change according to the need of the people. And that attitude is only possible when you have aristocratic men, or junzi within the imperial matrix. I stop here.
I got to say one thing, because something Mark said and something Quan said actually made me think of this. It's when we talk about the emphasis of serving in government here, it's worth remembering divorcing presentism from it. There were no civil institutions that existed outside of government in China at that time. In modern parlance, Confucius might say a life of service is what you should strive to lead. And we see it as having multiple avenues to be of service to others. But in his time and place, government was it. That was the only gig in town. There were no enterprises. There was nothing that could be seen as a civil institution. And so this was your option to be of service. So if you're going to live a junzi life and be of service, this is how you do it. Go for it.
Okay, so a lot of politics. That's why we take a break next week, because we got the election. And then I think that's a totally different situation. And for sure, when we elect, we don't elect a junzi. Okay, only Confucius only work after the person got elected. We hope, and this guy is a junzi. Okay, so that's the different situation. And I hope not going to too much on the politics, because again, okay, the purpose here and all my meetup is reading the original. Okay, so we read the text, we understand the text, we have our own understanding. So before I go to, let's have a Quan before I go to the last chapter. Quan, please.
Yes, I will take 30 seconds. Jason Amon is absolutely right when he say that when you are born in the nobility, the only way to be a public figure is to work for the government at the time. Okay, it was 25 centuries ago. Even the academic circles, like the Jixia Academy, for example, was created by the government, okay, in the Qi Principality. So it's absolutely right. But the nuance that I wanted to say, that the villages, communities at the time had autonomous, an autonomous functioning, okay, in the sense that you had the chief of the village, you have the elders of the village, and unless they enter into rebellion against the aristocrat ruling them, most of the time they were let the aristocrat left them alone, functioning more or less in an autarkic manner within their rural community. But once again, if we speak of people born into the nobility, either in the high aristocracy or the small gentry, that's true that being an advisor to the government was practically the only honorable issue for a gentleman. I stop here.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's to go to the last one to celebrate the last one. And I think that's one also important. The first one we talk about a lot of history. This one talk about politics. Okay, the last one in my interpretation, how do we get there? Okay, so and I think Confucius agree with me. I'm fine with Confucius. Let's read the last one. Come on, please.
Okay, so 20.3 by Professor Robert Eno. The master said, if you do not know your destiny, you cannot be a Junzi. If you don't know Li, you cannot take your stand. If you don't interpret people's words, you cannot interpret people.
Okay, thank you, Kwang. Let me, just 1 minute. I lost my screen, just 1 minute.
Did you need me to share mine?
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
got it.
that's one.
Yep. Book 20, Chapter 3, The End. The Master said, if one doesn't know the mandate of heaven, he cannot be a Junzi. If one doesn't know rituals, he cannot conduct himself. If one doesn't understand words, he cannot know people.
Thank you, Aman. Okay, so here talk about three things. You need to know the mandate of heaven. Okay, this one is, I believe, it's more on the later time concept. Ritual. Okay, Li. Okay, and don't know people's words. Okay, and the three things: people, ritual, and destiny. Your but not destiny, the heaven, religious side. So I think this one is important because I do see this one connect with the previous chapter, book 16. Let me show you on this one. Chapter 13, I put a note here when okay, so when Confucius disciple as Confucius' son, right? They talk. He's talking about does he asked Confucius' son, does you learn anything special from your father? Okay, he said, right? He described a famous story, right? What Confucius taught his son. All right. Have you studied the Book of Rites, Rituals, right? I replied, not yet. Okay, Confucius say what? Without studying the Book of Right, you have no ground to stand. Okay, so that's reflect like you need to know the ritual. Otherwise, you don't know how to behave yourself. Okay, and then next, and another thing is Confucius asks you, have you studied Book of Oath? Okay, and I replied, not yet. Confucius say, without studying Book of Oath, you have nothing to say. Okay, language, okay, behavior. I think that's Confucius want to do. And how to get there? Confucius is, he talk about willing to learn. So learning the ancient texts, that's Confucius want to say, to learn the ritual from the Book of Ritual and learn the word from the Book of Oath. And that's he want to talk about. And I believe if we want to learn the mandate of heaven, you probably need to study the I Ching, the Book of Change. And then one thing to announce is I decide to, I don't know anybody see the announcement I just put on is the, this Saturday, I'm going to give a primary introduction about the Book of Change, I Ching, okay. Not the interpretation, but more on open up the book and see what the book talk about. Just like when we read in the Confucius Analects, right? I read the text instead of check or listen to other people talking about what is Confucianism. Okay, and that's in this Saturday I try to do is just look at the book, see what the book said. Okay, and then you can have your own understanding and see what's doing up. So here I think to me this message is Book of Change, Book of Right, Book of Oath. Okay, that's the three things Confucius is talking about. Yeah, I stop here and Aman, please.
Jason, I absolutely agree with you. This is a throwback to those three. Um, I'll take this opportunity to just sort of make a much broader analysis of the Analects and its place here and where this chapter actually fits in. What was happening in Confucius' time in the spring and autumn's period? They were on the precipice of the warring states. All of China was in decadence. Everything was crumbling around their ears, and the smartest people of the time were casting about to try and figure out what went wrong. How could we have had something as good as the early Zhou and now have this, which the most prescient amongst them saw as calamity unavoidable on the horizon? Every thinker of their time that later became known as the 100 Schools came up with an answer to how do we get it back? Here you have Confucius answers. Clear as day. You need to understand why the mandate of heaven is bestowed and lifted. And why are we decaying? Because it's being taken away from a decadent Zhou dynasty. Could we restore it? Ideally, but you don't understand how the mandate works. You don't understand why the situation is as it is. That's almost a mystical explanation for the current state of affairs in his life. If you don't know ritual, you can't be a junsa. And there are so many instances in the Analects where he points, particularly at the G family, for not understanding ritual, really not getting it because they keep doing rituals that they're not legitimately allowed to do. And failing to uphold ritual is also part of the reason for the decline of the empire. But last but not least, and this goes to the heart of my argument of what I believe Confucius' argument to be, the rectification of names. If you don't know words, you don't know people. If you don't call things the right things, you are inviting the absolute disintegration of the foundational glue of a culture. This is Confucius' argument, in my opinion. And it's why the very last punctuation is if you don't understand words, you can't understand people. Get the right words for the right things and the right people. Stop letting these people pretend that they are kings, these Bao Wong, and we could have things the way they used to be. I think it ties a nice bow around the Analects, and it really does offer meat on the bones of what his argument has been all along and how it still prevailed by the time of this writing.
Thank you, Aman. Okay, so to this point, we finished 20 books of Analects. And I think that's a wonderful journey. Okay, and I don't know how many of you read every single word. Okay, and then at least we guarantee Aman and I read every single word. Okay, and then ponder on every single word. Okay, I believe Aman also do the same way. Okay, I think that doesn't matter if we do it right or wrong or a good job or bad job, but at least, I think that's a great achievement, at least for Aman and me. And then I remember 2022 in the January, and I just a little bit personal thing to share. When my father is very sick, and then I start to do the translation, and then right now already past 2 years, my father passed away 2 years ago, and then I still continue to doing this job and put to the end. I think I do a great job, and to complete this mission And then and thank you everyone to support. Okay, either agree with me or disagree with me, or that's all great help for myself. And then so next week I'm going to take one day off because the election day. Okay, the reason is very simple. First, two reasons. One is we are going to continue on 道德经 reading after this from chapter 1. So it makes sense to take break for one day. Second, I don't want when we are meeting and the people has new present in your mind, and then that will be very difficult to discuss. It doesn't matter which one you support, and then that's disturbing, I believe. So so let's take a few minutes before the end, and then we can focus on this chapter, and also give some brief. Since we only have 15 minutes left, give some brief idea about what you go through this one, and not necessarily talk about things you like, you appreciate. Also talk about something you don't like. Okay, and some words from Confucius you disagree or you totally disgust. Let's put it this way. Okay, I think that's common for even you read Bible, they have something you totally dislike. So I like to hear about this, and I don't any comment welcome. Kwang, please.